That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is Commissioner Cooper, and this is the most exciting weekend for fantasy drafts. Got everyone and their mama doing their drafts this weekend. So sit back, relax, get ready for your drafts with us. We got Brian Scott in from the Injury List podcast to do his Inside the Medical Tent. We're going to grade one of your drafts. That's always a lot of fun. We're also going to do some predictions into the season, and then we have our first fantasy breakdown. It's time for TSS Fantasy.
Yeah! Here we go!
It's time for TSS Fantasy.
It is Commissioner Cooper.
I could do a whole 49ers show right now.
Ready to rock out with my gavel out.
Oh yeah, baby!
Don't sleep on my Patriots,
And we're ready for football. Is that
Joe Burrow with his wrist? I'm curious.
I find you guilty of all charges.
Although you consistent force in this one,
Please develop some really great chemistry.
DJ Chuck Bass.
This guy has been doing it ever since coming off.
I hope you like the way I pimped
He's
you out.
made 4 targets in all 3 of the
That
games.
scored a touchdown this year.
You know, the great thing about being a football player is you don't have to take a shower to go to work.
There it is.
Yeah, well, some people just don't come to work at all. That's right. My co-hosts right now are incognito because they're nowhere to be found. But that doesn't matter. I'm going to take over controls tonight. I do, of course, got Brian Scott in the wings as well. So let's get things started. I don't have any introductions, so let's talk specifically about paying the bills. Go to Underdog Fantasy, hit the promo code TSS. We'll double that deposit up to $100. If you're interested, probably by now you've done your fantasy drafts, but looking into next season, if you're looking for some championship bling, look no further than Pro-Am belts. If you're watching on YouTube, do us a huge solid. Hit the subscribe, hit the follow, hit a like, hit a comment, do all that crazy stuff. Little things stopping you from doing it. Big things popping for us when you do, so we do appreciate it. All right, guys. Well, let's get things started tonight with some little news. Well, in the news, the first thing, I know it's the story du jour. Brandon Ayuk signs. Yay for Justin. I wish he was here. I even wrote a whole little script about how that he's the perfect co-host to talk about this. But Brandon Ayuk re-signing with the 49ers. The big question, of course, we're a fantasy show. How does that affect fantasy? To me, that does downgrade Debo a little bit. I know Debo, everyone was really excited, obviously, and it makes sense. He would have a lot more targets without Ayuk in the mix. With him back in the mix, however, brings the value of Debo down just a tad. He's still a great asset. He runs, he does it all. So not too far down, but a little bit. And Brandon Ayuk finished around the 15th, 16th wide receiver last season, if I'm recalling correctly. The big question is, can he finish that way this year? And the answer is simple, yes. So why wouldn't he? This offense hasn't changed that much. Still have Christian McCaffrey in the mix. So, that's all really there is to say. But obviously, Debo Samuel on the other side is going to take attention off Ayuk just a bit. There's no reason not to see Brandon Ayuk in that top 15 range if the cards fall right for him. And Debo has had a history of injuries as well. So just something to take note of. If I recall this correctly, he hasn't finished a full season. And I think it was about 4 or 5 years, maybe. I apologize if I'm misquoting that. But it has been. He's obviously missed a few games each season just because of the way he plays. So Brandon Ayuk stock going way up this week. All right, so you're getting ready for your fantasy draft. I mentioned it earlier. Everyone's getting ready. We got like I said, it's the most drafts going on this particular weekend. So the question, of course, is how do you get ready? How do you draft? What's the strategy? We've been going over that all summer. We've been talking about all that. One thing that we haven't brought up, and it's something that some people take note of, some people don't. So if you do take note of this, I'd like to bring it up. Last year, we had what was called a bye NATO by some, a bye hurricane, whatever you want to call it. You had weeks where it was a week or maybe 2 weeks where you had a lot of teams on bye. So I want to make you aware that we do have a couple this season. Week 12, you got Falcons, Bills, Bengals, Jets, and Saints. Not that the Jets matter. But you got 6 teams on a bye that week, and also the same amount in week 14. Ravens, Broncos, Texans, Colts, Patriots, and Commanders. Now on the latter end of that, doesn't seem like to be much, but again, it's still 6 teams, so just something to take note of. And in week 6, now this is early, it's only 4 teams, but it's significant fantasy teams with the Chiefs, Rams, Vikings, and America's team, the Miami Dolphins. So just something to take note of when you're drafting. That's not, to me, it's not nothing that I draft and take note of, to be quite honest with you, because I just want to build my team, and I'll deal with the bye weeks later. Sometimes I got to take an L. But these are week 12 and week 14, so they're going to matter for you down the stretch, but you have time to prepare. So my suggestion, of course, go on your drafts, build your team, don't worry about the buys, and you can worry about those later. Looks like Justin is such a trooper, like he's joining from the car. Let me see if I can bring him in. He doesn't sound like a big echo machine. What up, Justin?
Am I echoing?
No, not at all. You sound great, actually.
Oh, perfect.
You look better than you normally do, too, actually, believe it or not.
Yeah. Computer, but I got a fucking $900 phone, so that works, right?
That's always the way it works out. All right, well, I brought up Ayuk earlier, so since you're here, I got to honor you by at least bringing it back up again. The only thing I mentioned was obviously Debo's value obviously goes down a smidgen. Not having Ayuk is going to take a little bit off that, and we talked about where Ayuk finished last year. Do you think Ayuk can get to that same level this year? And what do you think about Debo? Is that the same thought that you have on that?
Yeah, so I think that kind of holds his value from last year. The team still isn't really a heavy squad. It might change because fucking Trent Williams might be gone, or he might not show up. So that daylights out of me as a fan. But yeah, I mean, I would expect Ayuk to be kind of on the same track that he was last. Maybe they, since they paid him, they kind of make him go, hey, all right, prove that you're a 100 catch a year receiver. So maybe that's the uptick. But I don't see it in the red zone. I see red zone being Christian McCaffrey territory, Debo territory. On the Debo take, I was talking to somebody on Twitter, and I think it's possible that because he's in the last year of his contract, because they just re-signed Christian McCaffrey, they kind of revert back to 2021 Debo, and they give him more rushes in the red zone. They give him more, lateral movements and stuff. And he's really good at just taking the football and putting it in the end zone. So I would not be surprised if they decide last year his contract and really, hammer it down like, hey, get the most use out of him, because he sounds like right now, it sounds like he's not going to be somebody who's going to be coming back next year with all the cap casualties that we have on the team. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't lower Debo because Brandon Ayuk ups his value because it puts number 2 on them. Debo Samuel is not a good route runner. He is good at a lot of things, but pure route running is not his speciality. That is Brandon Ayuk's specialty. So if you put a number 1 on him, Sauce Gardner versus Debo Samuel ain't catching one goddamn ball. But if it's the other guy versus Debo Samuel might still have a day. That Jets defense is tough regardless, but I like him a lot better against the number 2 in anybody's team than the number 1 for sure.
Debo more the Neanderthal type player. Get the football, me take it in. Where Brandon Ayuk's that more slick style receiver. So yeah, feel you on that. Brought up the bye weeks, so just something to take note of. And then last thing, we're gonna go and we'll bring Brian in. AJ Dillon done for the season with a neck injury. Marshawn Lloyd's on the shelf as well. May or may not be ready for week 1. So are you targeting Josh Jacobs a little higher in drafts since everyone's got their drafts coming up this weekend?
I was targeting Josh Jacobs as my RB1 regardless, but this just more. Everybody's kind of like, washed on him because of last year. I mean, last year it was a mixture of a little bit of injury, but also a little bit of like the Raiders pretty much saying, fuck you, we're not going to resign you. So for me, I'm like looking at it like, fuck yeah, it's Josh Jacobs season all day long. If they start using him like Aaron Jones, then there's a good chance that he ends up back on that track where he was previous season, not last season, but the season before, when he led the league in rushing. He was also catching about 50, 60 passes. Just absolutely money. He's a must-have in my book in redraft. And in Dynasty, he's somebody I would definitely target because, he's somebody who has another 2-3 years. I look at him as somebody who's built like Frank Gore. Like, they'll break down, but it takes a lot of freaking miles on the odometer for them to break down. They're not like a Devon A-Chain goes in there and he gets hit one time. Even though he's elusive, he gets hit one time and both starts to fall off the axle on the back end. But yeah, they're guys that really take hits, and they're the real sturdy backs of the league. So, I think that Josh Jacobs is a perfect one for that. And I don't know if you mentioned it, but Elijah Mitchell also went on the IR. And here's the sneak peek right here. Get Jordan Mason. He's built exactly like Josh Jacobs. And you got to love a guy who puts the work in. He went out and he bought himself one that throws the football to you. He spent $3,000 of his undrafted free agent money. Think of that. Undrafted free agent money. He's making less than Purdy is making. And he went out, he spent it on getting himself better at catching the football. He knows that if CMC goes down, he's the next man up. Hope CMC doesn't go down, but that guy might still have a lot of potential regardless.
I like it. Yeah, Josh Jacobs. To be honest with you, prior to the season, but that AJ Dillon injury to me definitely affects him in a good way. Obviously, I was thinking it would be more of a three-headed beast as we got into late December, during playoff times or, during your fantasy playoff times. But it looks like that's not going to be the case. So definitely like Josh Jacobs in that offense. All right. Well, we kept Brian waiting long enough. Let's bring him in. Let's get inside the medical tent with Brian. We got some injuries to talk about.
A.J. Dillon just went into the medical tent a moment ago.
And just so we're aware, that was done way prior to the A.J. Dillon injury.
How ironic.
I know.
Isn't that crazy?
Welcome in, Bri, from the Injury List podcast. Has a great blog inside the medical tent with, of course, our boy Angelo Duke, who's not in the building tonight. Bri, what do we got going on inside the medical tent?
It's almost like we knew something bad was going to happen to A.J. Dillon. We actually did talk about it on the August 23rd episode in detail, I might add, during this exact segment. And if you go watch our Twitter feed, my Twitter feed, that Sports Podcast Network Twitter feed, you'll see my take on A.J. Dillon's injury. And I wasn't that far off. The concern was that he would have major nerve injury or major nerve damage, or at least significant nerve damage, and they were going to treat it cautiously. Well, sounds like he does. And this could potentially be a career-altering type of injury. To shut it down for the whole year is quite significant. So we'll have to see whether or not they're going to treat that conservatively. Hopefully not surgery, because that could sometimes go very wrong. So I'm hoping for him, at least, they can avoid that. Now, some other athletes we talked about this week. Mark Andrews, there's been a lot of hush going around about where he's been. He's kind of been MIA the last 2 weeks. Apparently, he got into some minor fender bender right before preseason started, and then was kind of absent, even though apparently the team examined him and said there was nothing serious. Lo and behold, he actually did practice today, the first time he stepped on the field for practice this entire preseason, or at least in the last 2 weeks. It sounds like he's going to be ready to go. But when you have a guy who got probably a little banged up from the accident, even if it was minor, you can get some aches, pains, bruises, things like that. Hopefully this doesn't lead to an injury because he hasn't been on the field practicing. And you have to wonder if maybe because he was somewhat injured from that car accident, that's a little concerning. Let's not forget he did fracture his fibula last year, missed 7 games with a week 10 injury. So he was able to make it back in time for the playoffs. However, did I lose you? Oh, sorry, no. There you go. Sorry, I lost the screen. But he should be able to work his way back into game shape. He's a professional. He's been in the league a long time, although he is 29. That's getting up there in tight end years. Contrary to Mark Andrews, you have a guy, CeeDee Lamb, who a lot of people have been asking about what is he at risk for injury given his contract holdout and the lack of preseason training. And unlike Andrews, I don't think there is an issue here, even though Mike Florio seems to think that he's at risk for pulling a hammy or having a soft tissue injury. Last time I checked, Florio did not have a medical degree. He's definitely been practicing and keeping himself in game shape. Just because he's not doing it with the team, he is not injured, unlike Andrews, who probably got a little banged up during that car accident. So I don't foresee this as being an issue. CD Lamb knew he was waiting for a big payday. He's going to be ready to go. I don't foresee this as a problem. I don't think he's at any higher risk for a soft tissue injury than he would have been had he been in there for the preseason start. Jacoby Brissett banged up his shoulder a little bit in the last preseason game. He was only in for one series. The plan was for him to only play like two, so they ended up taking him out. Sounds like it wasn't a serious thing. He said he could have kept playing, but the Patriots wanted to be cautious with it. So he says he's 100% fine. I say no reason to doubt him. He's not going to let this opportunity slip away. This could be one of the last shots he gets at being a starter heading into the season for any team. He's been in the league a while. He's been a constant backup for the most part. And then Josh Downs, he has a high ankle sprain. They're saying that he should be ready the Colts week 1. I'm very doubtful for that. Usually this takes about 4 to 6 weeks minimum. They haven't put him on IR, so it sounds like they're encouraged by that. At least he might be back in a week or two, but I'd be shocked if he's ready week 1. Word to the wise here. You don't want to rush guys back with the high ankle sprain too soon. We've seen it happen in the past. It just sets them back for the whole season. You don't want to do that this early in the season. So I'm hoping that they actually don't play him week 1, give him some more time to rest and recover. But they're still saying that they're optimistic he could be ready.
All right. Well, take note of that going into your drafts this weekend. Brian, where can we find all your great stuff? And so we can subscribe and I'll do all that fun stuff.
Well, I've got some awesome episodes coming up on the podcast. I just released one not too long ago with a former Major League Baseball player, Brandon Puffer. He's got a cool story, or at least a very educational story to hear about, and an interesting career. So please check that out. You can find me on Twitter at Injured List Pod, on Instagram, Facebook, the Injured List Podcast. And one more thing before I go, not to burst your bubble, Justin, but Brandon Ayuk was a featured member of my pre-draft injury special the year he came out from college. He had been banged up a lot throughout his collegiate career. He has been banged up during his professional career as well. I just hope the 49ers did not overpay.
A little shade on his way out. All right, don't forget, follow the Injured List Podcast. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, get all that great content, and don't forget the Inside the Medical Trend blog. Check that out with Brian and Andrew. All right, we're gonna send you out, Brian. We'll see you next week, and let's hear from our friends at NeuroGuard.
Dr. Michael Hutchison has harnessed the latest in neuromuscular dentistry and impact technology to develop a mouthguard that does more than protect. It enhances. NeuroGuard Plus isn't just a mouthguard. By focusing on the jaw's physiological position, it provides an added layer of neuroprotection, significantly reducing the risk of sports-related neurological injuries. All athletes should be using a custom mouthguard designed to their bite position. NeuroGuard Plus was created as a means to maintain your physiological jaw position regardless of your bite. The appliance is designed to optimize your upper-lower jaw relationship to improve your strength, your balance, your oxygen intake, and drastically lower your chance of a concussion. Independent studies have shown that the NeuroGuard Plus will provide you with improvement to both upper and lower body strength. The same improvements were not present with a common mouthguard. Over 6,500 athletes have used the NeuroGuard Plus. Dr. Hutchison is happy to say that the amount of diagnosed concussions is 0.2%. The NeuroGuard Plus offers athletes, coaches, and parents an advantage to keep their players safe on the field. If you or your child actively participates in athletics, they need to be protected from the dangers of repetitive head trauma. Get your NeuroGuard Plus mouthguard today. Click on the link and use code ILPSports for 10% discount on your purchase.
Go get that perfect jaw alignment today. All right. Well, we gotta draft a grade. That's what's fun about tonight. Before we do that, though, Justin, since just me and you, let's get these predictions, NFL season predictions, out the way. I'm going to go take the lead on this, Justin, because believe it or not, me and our other co-hosts are kind of similar, where you, my friend, are a little bit different. So that'll be a good way to segue it. Here's, I can't wait to talk about it. Here is,
That before.
here is my predictions. Division winners. Seems pretty normal. Ravens, Chiefs, America's team, and the Texans. Wild cards, Bengals, Bills, and Jags. I wanted to talk about that in particular. You do have the Jags getting in the wild card. The other two do not, which I was a little surprised about because honestly, this is like a make or break season for the Jags. I feel like they've added Gabe Davis, although, they've lost Calvin Ridley, but does Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr., does that make up for the loss? They have also added to this defense, which should be improved. It was 22nd last year. Eric Armstead, Mitch Morris on the team. Remember, they went 9-8 last year. Not like they were horrible. They were right in the mix, but they certainly did struggle down the stretch. I feel like Lawrence has stepped up a bit. At least he's a little bit tiny above average QB with some great weapons. Could see some thunder and lightning with ETN and Bigsby. So I like the Jags getting in. I know that was a little bit different from the boys. On the other side, I got 49ers, Lions, Eagles, Bucks. And then I got Rams, Cowboys, and Packers in the wild card. That was the other team on the NFC side I just wanted to shout out was the Bucks. That seemed like one of the few that put them in there. Look, the bottom line is they spent money in the offseason to keep things the way they were. Don't forget, this team was not only in the playoffs last year, in the divisional playoffs, and they gave, no matter what the score, it was 31-23 against the Lions, but they gave them all that they were worth. So I like the Bucks at the very least to make the playoffs and win that division. Not as strong with the Falcons than I think my co-hosts are. And of course, the Super Bowl, the Ravens and the 49ers. And I'm going to say if this way I view this, if the Ravens get hot, I don't see anything stopping that train. I'm going to have to predict the Ravens to win it. All right. So as I said, LeDuc's a little similar, a little bit different here. He's got the Cowboys winning the East, NFC East, got the Eagles, though, in the wild card, and he's got the Falcons, and the only real difference, got the same Super Bowl prediction as I, same division winners, and a little bit different in the wild card. He has those sorry-ass Jets in there, and the Chargers as well, which to me was a surprise, to be honest. I'm not really big on the Chargers this year. Fred, all right, now for some reason, he thinks the Jets are going to win the AFC East. I don't know why. And he's got the Colts winning the AFC South as well. Bengals, Bills, and America's team. It's an all AFC East party in the wild card. A little bit different with the Super Bowl. He's got Chiefs and 49ers. He does have the same makeup the division winners as LeDuc. And, well, except for he's got Cowboys and Eagles switched. All right, so here comes the good part where things get a little bit crazy with Justin. Justin, talk about your playoff predictions and why you picked them.
Oh, well, yeah, sure. Let me see those predictions. All right. Yeah, I mean, you know me, I'm always ahead of the curve on this when it comes to this panel. This panel likes to live in and not really go further into the we're like cutting the cheese boards. You guys are eating the cheddar and I'm over here eating all the other stuff. I'm eating the brie, I'm eating the goat cheese. I'm getting my hands in everything. So when I look at division winners, I look at teams that are really they're there. And I look at the Browns, for instance. They're there. When they were there on offense, they were beating the Ravens. They were beating the Steelers. They were beating these teams that they need to beat in order to get the division. I think the Browns, call me crazy, but I think this is the season that they paid for 1 year for Deshaun Watson to have $264 million the season. The division-winning Cleveland Browns mark it down at the first time.
Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me?
Speaking of the AFC South, I've got the Texans. I don't think anybody else thinks elsewise. I think Fred thought the Colts, but what the fuck does Fred know? But I think the Texans, this is the team. This is the San Francisco of the AFC, truly.
Ooh.
Built on defense, built through their drafts, and now they have a really solid, legitimate game changer, and he's legitimately elevated all the players around him. I think this is the year that somebody comes in and fearlessly takes out Mahomes, and I think the Texans are going to be that team. Mahomes, I think obviously Kansas City is still the best team in the West. I smart and picked the Chargers last year. I'm not going to do that this year. I like Harbaugh, but I think that he's going to take another year to build. And then the Dolphins, America's team. You're going to get your home playoff. I feel it this year. I feel like the Bills are going to be one of those teams that last minute gets that wild card spot. I think they still probably rock the Dolphins in the playoffs, but I think the Dolphins finally get that playoff home game that they've been crying about and saying, oh, but if we only had it at the Hard Rock Stadium, then we would be winning.
That's only the Bills fan crying about how hot it is down there. So make it a night game this year so it's not so hot. Whiny. Look, we were talking about America's team. I'm excited for the season. Obviously, we're in the mix, but I feel like almost like it's the 1990s again with Dan Marino, and it's like, all this build up and we're in the mix, but man, we just can't fucking win it all. Come on, one time. Anyway, we got a draft a grade. Let's check it out. All right, stepped up on the graphics this week, as you can tell. I got the whole. I know you probably can't. All right, we're gonna go by team, but this is the draft itself. There'll be a few things I'm gonna point out, but I'll just revert back to this as we go through the teams because there's a couple of questionable things I felt that kind of went on that I want to talk about as we go. So let's start. We'll start with first pick. I got two. I was able to fit two in my graphic. We're gonna go number one pick and number two pick, and that's Mark and Freddie. So let's first talk about Mark's team. All right, look at that. Mark's already in. He's in the house, ready to rumble. Yeah, he's the 12th team. We had a little bit of controversy, by the way, too, Justin. But prior to this draft starting, I forget what pick my friend Craig was, but he must have been like 5th or 6th or something. I can't remember. But he in a redraft traded the number one pick to Mark, who is the commissioner of the league. So I was like, hey, I've never heard of this before. And we went on and on. Oh, it's his son, Chris, actually not even Mark on the thing. Anyway, so we had a big old hubbub about that, but because I just never heard of that in redraft before. So anyway, like I said, fellas, next year, if I get a good spot, if you want to pay my roster, my entry fee, I got you. All right, Mark's team. All right, looking at this squad, let me see. I got to go down my notes because I graded everyone. All right, I gave Mark a B. I mean, the team itself, when it was over, Mark was like, oh, my team, it sucks. It doesn't suck, Mark. I'm here to put the little head on my shoulder here because it doesn't suck. I don't think anything here sucks, but I don't necessarily love everything you got, especially like these running. I'm not in love with Aaron Jones, and the rest of the crew here. We talked about Jordan Mason though, so that's obviously a good handcuff for McCaffrey for you, with Mitchell going down, and the receivers. I mean, they're good. I just not in love with them. I mean, it's just, again, and just so you know, Justin, this is a PPR. I forgot to tell you, full PPR. They do have some bonus points for QBs as well when they hit certain marks. All right, Justin, what do you grade Mark's team? Let's talk about that. What do you think?
I think Mark's team is a very solid B+. I like what he did by doubling up with McCaffrey and Mason, and he's got McCaffrey, Cook, Aaron Jones, very smart there. All three guys are known for being able to rush and receive. So I love what he did there. He didn't short himself on receivers either. He didn't really get the cream of the crop receivers, but you know what? Here's the thing. You get enough wide receiver twos that one of them's going to pop into wide receiver one and then make everything else look good. I think he did a fine job with Puka and Pittman, and then Zay, Kirk, Palmer. They're all wide receiver ones on their respective teams. So it just takes a couple good weeks for them to fly high into that wide receiver 24 conversation. And Joku, he's hit or miss for me because he didn't really do much with Watson. He was more popping off when Flacco was there, but hopefully the rapport is getting built in the training camp, and hopefully that goes well. Brandon Aubrey, amazing kicker. Dallas is kind of linked in with Dak Prescott right there. Nobody really wants to talk about it, but it's almost great to stack up your quarterback and your kicker, because guess what? Your quarterback leads them down the field and your kicker finishes it off. And then the Steelers, always a nice choice for defense. I can't really say too much other than I think it's a really solid draft, Mark. I think that my only nitpick is that I would have just, probably a little bit more value receivers. But if you went up and got Christian McCaffrey, more props to you. That's how you start your draft. On the other side, Freddie, I'm kind of disappointed in Freddie's freaking running backs. He went out, he got the nicest, new Corvette in Hall, and then you open up his garage, the rest of it is junk. Like he's got like an old ass model freaking like 911 Porsche and Camaro, but the thing has probably got like 150,000 miles. He's got the old beater truck in Ezekiel Elliott that probably needs a new chassis. And then he's got, Zach Charbonnet. I don't know what card to call Zach Charbonnet. I like him, but he's a backup. Braylon Allen, I love what he did with Braylon Allen, putting him with Breece Hall. That's a very nice, mixture right there. And then Antonio Gibson. Antonio Gibson is that beater card that you give to your kid. Like, he's been passed around the league now, and everybody's like, all right, Antonio Gibson, we know what he is. He's going to be fine if, Ramondre Stevenson goes down, but, he's never going to really shine again. He's not going to have that shine first bottom off the lot. Now he's just your son's beater, freaking 2003 Honda Civic. That's what he is to that team. And then, receiver-wise, I like what he did. But this is kind of like hanging out in that wide receiver 2 range, but it's hanging out on the older side of it. You got Gabe Davis, Cooper, and Sutton. And T. Higgins and Brandon Ayuk, you got 2 guys that were contract situations. It's, for me, Freddie, you kind of did like maybe a B- here. I like Kittle, though. Thank you for the Kittle Ayuk love, my friend. I know you love those 49ers. And then the Jets defense. Can't go wrong with that. And Harrison Buckner. Chiefs are going to score.
So did you give Mark an A, by the way? Because I didn't hear the letter for Mark.
B+, and B-.
B+ and B-. Believe it or not, I like Freddie's team. I gave him an A, and the reason I did, he's got Josh Allen, got one of the top QBs, so that's a position it's going to be hard to beat him in. I like what Breece Hall is going to do this year, and we'll see what's up with Kamara. Zeke, definitely not a big fan, especially he's not even going to be starting. Zach Charbonnet, that's always a wait and see. So I'm not going to go through the whole every player, but and the receiver group, I like what his receiver group ends up with. And again, he's got a top tight end, and he got the homer pick with his defense, and he's got his top running back as a homer pick as well. So I feel like he did a pretty good job there. I actually gave Freddie an A-. So we're a little off on Fred's grade. All right, so let's check out the next 2. This is the number 3 pick and the number 4 pick. This guy named Jason, look at, he got Pat Mahomes and Caleb Williams. I mean, I gave Jason an A+ just because I was the one who did it. So what do you think of this squad, though? I will just give myself some critique. I'm glad that I brought that up, because I did want to just make this point. I am a traditional guy when it comes to fantasy, as far as I will build my team through the running game. That's where I go all the time. However, in this particular draft, the way things were falling, I didn't necessarily go the route I normally went. I kind of shied off that path a little bit. I did go back-to-back Bijan, and then I went Josh Jacobs. But then after that, I went receiver. And then Mahomes is in the 5th round. I'm like, hello, I got to go. Plus, when you get the bonuses in this league, it just made sense. And then, like I said, the receivers is where I kind of hit my mark, and I got Pitts as well. So I like my squad. I only picked Saints D because it was pretty much one of my last picks, and they play Carolina week 1, so I just figured what the hell. All right, what do you think, Justin?
I like your squad too. I think your squad has very much a second half behind it. There's a lot of guys on there: Roma Duze, Luke McCaffrey. You know, you'll definitely hang around the first half, but I think the second half has got big things written for you. I like what you guys did with B. John and Josh Jacobs. That's a very nice start. Tyler Algier is a solid backup. Rico is and then obviously with the Lloyd Newton kind of you backed up Josh. Hopefully he stays on the field during the season. Yeah, if I were to give I would say, and don't say I'm a stickler, but like I would say you're like a really solid B plus. But to be honest, if you're grading on a curve, it looks like this is a very like elite league. So I would say a B plus is just as good as an A.
Oh, look at you making me feel good. All right, let's go to Eric's squad. Jalen Hurts, can't go wrong with that. Look at that. I like the running backs here. I love the receivers here. Got a great young tight end. And got Hockenson when he gets back. And got Cowboys D. I gave this one an easy. I even put easy A for Eric. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like right up there. Like I said, like there's just little things that I'm nitpicking. I don't like having multiple players with injuries on a refresh team because that's just asking for you to you have to drop one of them sooner rather than you want. You know what I mean? Like, I never want to have somebody that I'm like, if you go on a skid, oh fuck, I dropped this guy, and you got Brooks and Hockenson both guaranteed pretty much 4 games out, and then you got Hopkins on top of that, who's not looking so as far as being weak. I don't think it's going to extend very far, but he's also got a history of injuries. So for me, I look at this team. I see there's a ton of potential. I like what he did with Xavier Worthy. Olave, you got the deep threat guys there. Lockett probably cost him nothing. He's got Henry and Connor to shore it up until Brooks gets healthy. But you also got Mitchell on there who's not even going to see the field, so you already make a decision with that. For me, this team, it's a nicely put together on paper, but all the injuries just make it a C plus for me.
Ooh, C plus. I gave him an easy A. Eric, if you're listening, Chris Godwin for Worthy, I definitely would do. I'd like to have that little combo going. All right, so Justin, I didn't get a kick out of this. This is last year's winner and last year's loser, and that's what happens when you're the loser in this league. Mike became Michaela for the draft and I thought he was going to put the stickers on the board. He didn't even do that. He changed right away, but at least he came out and did some photos. So good sport there. We appreciate it. Craig was our winner last year. And so, I looked at his squad and, we're of course in a very reactionary world. I was looking at him because this was definitely in this particular league, it's important to have a good QB, and he waited so long. And then we talked about it after that those guys were coming to him that he wanted. And then when they didn't come, he got kind of distracted and started going on something else. And then he went back. But as I look at this team, as I looked at the team as a whole, obviously I'm not in love with the QB group he has. Because of the settings. Now, again, if this is just a regular league, not horrible. But when you're in this league and you get extra bonuses for throwing for 4 TDs and 400 yards, that becomes important. But the rest of his squad is dynamic. I love the rest of what he's done. So my thought on this team is I gave it a B. And my thought is on those days that Kirk Cousins has if they go off for whatever reason, this team's going to be really tough to beat, in my estimation. What do you think of Craig's team?
Yeah, I really like this team. Whenever I'm in the basement, going in the bargain anything. I always try and think of it as, hey, I don't want to get the worst of the worst. If I can get that middling group, there's definitely going to be games where, like you said, they're going to put you over the top. There's going to be games where you regret it. But there's going to be games where Deshaun goes for 4 touchdowns and puts another touchdown rushing, and it's going to be like, this is what I fucking wanted the entire time. But if you're going to do that, you have the roster to back it up. For me, I look at his roster and I go, he's got the receivers to back it up. I like Ingram and John Smith, but those running backs, and that's nothing again, no shade to Pacheco, but it's everything after that. It's Swift, it's Eckler, it's Benson, it's Bigsby. It's guys that you're kind of asking to do more than they've put out in the past. And for Eckler, it's also asking a guy to kind of get past his injury history on a worse team. Like I don't see the point. If I were to get somebody like Eckler or Swift, I'd want to also get like their backup, because I'm like, these are guys that have major injury histories. Like literally once a year they miss like 3 or 4 games. And the point of Swift has had a history of sometimes not even getting past 14 games in a season. So that's kind of tough. Then when you back it up with Trey Benson and Tank Bigsby, those are two guys that are really sturdy running backs that don't really have too huge of an injury history in James Conner and Travis Etienne. So it doesn't mix well for me. So when I look at it, I'm like, there's definitely a lot of potential here, but I probably have to give Craig a B-.
All right. So how about Michaela? Look, Tua is of course a great grab. As far as I'm concerned, Jonathan Taylor, gotta love that. I think this the start of the running back core is good. I'm not a big Gus Edwards fan, and Najee, I had him last year, was very disappointed, especially. But with Jalen Warren, possibly, I know that was, I believe, if I remember correctly, it was a hamstring. I remember it was something that may linger, whatever it was. Apologize for not having that on top of my head. But that's something that could linger and see Najee in a starting role, which obviously is good. The receiver core I like, but I'm not a big Neighbors fan, but I'm also, this is PPR, and I feel like he'll do a lot better in PPR than he is going to be in standard. Because the fact is, Daniel Jones ain't throwing 4 TDs. So in my estimation, Malik is good in PPR, which is this league is. So it's not bad. I do like the receiving core. Dalton Schultz, okay. I mean, the tight ends definitely need some work. Overall, I gave Michaela a B-, because of the lack of depth at running back. And then again, the tight end position, I don't know how many weeks he's going to win that position. What do you think?
So what happens when you lose is sometimes you reach. Michaela looks like he reached a ton at receiver, and there's never a good reason to double up on defense if you need other places. Like you could have probably used whatever the Eagles or the Browns pick, which either one's a great defensive pick, to maybe pick a more viable second tight end, or pick a better, fourth wide receiver. I look at this team and I go, this team could be competing for the I don't know if you call it toilet bowl, whatever whatever it is. They could be competing in the loser bracket again, and it's just because overall, and no offense, Michaela, but it is literally mediocre written all over it. Like, this is a team where the standouts are nice, but there's also question marks. One's a rookie, one's a disgruntled veteran. The other one is Jonathan Taylor, who's probably going to be foolproof, but he also had an injury history. You gotta really stick your studs, and you gotta fill it out with guys that you're not reaching on. I feel like this draft with Khalil Shakir, Romeo Dobbs, that's a bunch of reaches for me. I feel like at some point, this could have been turned around into some better guys, especially as I look at the Craig's draft. I see Christian Watson, Deontay Johnson over there. I'm just like, man, like those are some real good freaking guys right there. And he still had, DeAndre Swift too. And I just think this was a little bit of a reach. I'm going to give this one just a solid.
All right. Well, I agree. And Hayden Hurst to me is just like a waste of a roster spot. I would even like to have seen Somebody like freaking thing was saying, oh, Gerald Everett. Like he's even right now the second tight end of the Bears. But the way he looks in preseason, and that guy's a gamer, especially beginning of the season. So that I would even picked up him before Hayden Hurst. So that's kind of a waste of a roster spot for me. All right, let's move on. The father and son edition here. Marvell starts his squad here. Obviously, Lamar Jackson is always nice. If Marvell, if you're watching, when you went up on one of the last few picks and said, why not with Bo Nix? I could take an entire show and tell you why not, but I just don't have the time. Hey, Chan, I like obviously a running back, but again, I'm pulling up the draft here. He went Chan. Where you at, Marvell? Let's see. He's right here. So went Chan in the third round, so not too bad. Went receiver first. So not horrible jumping up for Chan, not too high for him. Just because I think I like the value still in Mostert. Kenneth Walker, obviously, Brian Robinson Jr., so some decent backup depth, at least at the running back position. I like the receivers. The depth isn't great, but he's got two guys that could finish top 10. Both of them could. Cooper Kupp could end up coming back the season, a top 10 guy. CeeDee Lamb's already top 10. So that's definitely a big up for me. Dalton Kincaid, obviously winning that tight end position every week. I gave him a B+ only because I'm just not in love with the running back group as a whole. But again, top tier receivers I like. And then top 5 possibilities at QB and tight end. What do you think?
Yeah, so I can tell why they're father-son because here's what I like about both teams. I like that it's a very even build all around. I like that it took just as much care into putting a star player at the position. In Marvell's situation, I love that he went Kincaid Bowers because Kincaid Bowers very much has a chance to be a second half star. Something like a Von Adams trade happens, he could definitely slot into that number one overall wide receiver position. Then you look at he took chances, the proper chances with Achane, with Walker. He went out there. Brian Robinson Jr. has been impressing in camp. Ty Chandler, one of those really low key players that you got to be really smart about because guess who's in front of him? Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones has a notorious injuries. And Ty Chandler was real well in preseason. I love the CeeDee Lamb Cooper Kupp. Kupp is sliding a lot. If a lot of people are trying to get him as their number one, he's got him as their number 2. Now, Keon Coleman, I'm not the biggest fan of, but he's still a number 1 in the offense. Jackson Smith and Jigma, I'm a huge fan of. Jameson Williams, monster fan. I think that those guys have some serious potential to break 24 mold this year. And I'm bigger on Bo Nix after seeing some of his preseason. He's not going to look ugly. He really is. Hey. Oh, sorry. I'm coming in right now. Hey, Mom. But anyways, it's going to look pretty nice. But I think that it's going to be a lot of rushing touchdowns and everything. And then on the other side, Donovan, I think he's probably got the best draft of the group so far.
Yeah, on Donovan's squad, that was literally my notes. I gave him an A- only because the backup running backs I feel like lack that top 10, but that's just me nitpicking. And that was like my note after. Look at the rest of that roster. So love the combo with Murray and Harrison Jr. got the top combo there. Sam Laporta, a tight end. Even got the Ravens defense. Come on, man. Really, really love Donovan's squad. Did a great job there. All right, let's go Pete and Jay. I wrote in the notes, an oldie but goodie squad. Because you look at now the running backs, this was almost a 0 RB build with Mostert, Pollard. Those are those guys when you're doing 0 RB, that's where you're getting the range you're getting at. And you could tell where he went. A.J. Brown, Mike Evans, Stephon Diggs, and Keenan Allen. Like I said, oldies but goodies in this particular receiving core. And Travis Kelce, another one, went with another top tight end with Dallas Goedert as well. Jason, and then the America's team, some homer picks obviously in here as well with Jason Sanders' Dolphins D, and he went with Bucks D as well. So what do you think of Pete's team?
I think going to be dressed as a woman next year. I thought I'd seen the worst of it, but now no offense, Pete, but this is a team I look at and I go, holy shoot! Should we get the walkers out? Should we get the cafeteria set? It's way too old, and it's going to be a lot of injured guys. Oh man, Pete, I think you're my first. I'm going to give you a D, but I really draft an F.
So here's what's funny. Every year, funny quick story about Pete. Every year we say the same thing about the squad he drafts, and every year he's all right up in the mix, bro. So just to throw that out there, give Pete some cred. All right, Jay's got Joe Burrow, Brock Purdy. So I like the QB mix. Running backs is where I see a graveyard essentially here. But obviously pumped up on the receivers. Gotta love this receiving core. Jake Ferguson's always a good value when you're drafting that tight end. So I gave this squad a B, but it's really drifting to B minus with the lack of anything at the running back position. What do you think of Jay's squad, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, I like his running backs. I think that you gotta shots with number ones, and if you want to have a receiving core that looks this nice, got to kind of take the shot. And Zamir White, Singletary, ETN, they have all got their value. ETN has obviously got some receiving value to him as well. The tight end's the one that worried. Not mostly Ferguson, but Conklin. I was a big Conklin guy for a while, but he's just somebody who's kind of fallen off, and I don't think he was worth a pick. I think I'd rather just waiver somebody at that level. Ride the Ferguson wave because he's going to be good this year. You look at the other side. One thing Pete did really well was his tight ends. He got Kelsey and Goddard. So I imagine you guys have a flex spot. So he immediately becomes a flexible player. I don't think I would ever put Conklin as a flex unless it like literally last second and I needed somebody and I was praying that I could get like 10 points from him. But as far as, and it's once again, here's the thing. I never go double defense. Never double defense. Because guess what? It just it clogs up a spot. It's like going double kicker. Why would you do that? You're clogging up a spot for something you can get literally off the waiver.
So this was a strategy, just to throw this out there. This is a strategy I used to always implement, but it depends on the league. So going back to what I was saying earlier, Mark's league doesn't, this league doesn't put up a lot of points for defense, whereas in another league I'm in, there's more value in the defense. So I used to do the double defense, and the reason why it's different than kicker in the sense that if you have two good defenses, you can play matchups. And that's the reason why I used to implement. That was my thought process anyway, is I could play any matchup I want. The good defense over here is playing somebody crappy, then that's where I'm going. So that's why I would implement those strategies. But I agree totally on Conklin. It's the same thing with the Hayden Hurst thing. It's a waste of a roster spot. There's no way you're ever putting Conklin in for any reason other than a bye week. So just do yourself a favor, pick somebody else up that could turn into something of fantasy gold rather than just wasting a spot. All right, let's go to the last two. And I did want to point out Carlos's team because it was a very interesting draft strategy. And this is something I was just going to bring up real quick. Carlos is right here in the 11th spot. So he goes Jahmyr Gibbs. And then he goes Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Mark Andrews. Then he backs up his top RB with David Montgomery, then follows up with Nick Chubb. Then the next round goes Jerome Ford. So to me, that was a very interesting strategy. Yes, Doe Guitar, we do Dynasty. Absolutely. So if you have any questions, just pop them in there. No problem at all. Thanks for your comment. So I was really taken aback by that. I was like, wow, I can't believe this is what's going on right now. But looking at the team as a whole, Obviously, some decent receivers. Mark Andrews, if he can stay healthy. Obviously, you got your 49ers D in there as well. Nick Chubb, when he gets back, Gibbs, Nig, say that 3 times fast. Gibbs, Chubb combo is lethal. That's great. And obviously, if Anthony Richardson can show out like he did last year, there's good potential here. I was just confused about the whole monopolizing the Browns and Lions backfield. That was just my deal. So I'm going to give this one a B minus. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, I think that's pretty stout or pretty astute. It's probably a B. I mean, I get it, though. I get it. You want to monopolize a really good backfield. I mean, both these two teams love to run the football, and you're going to have two guys that are probably going to share it in both backfields. I mean, Gibbs and Montgomery, it's going to be a 1-2 tandem. And when Chubb gets back, it's going to be a 1-2 with Ford. Dobbins too. And Lawrence, which is nice because you got an upside guy, and if he falters, you have a guy who's rock solid. The receivers kind of leave you a little bit hanging there after Pickens, but I think Donnie Mitchell has some potential. Jordan Addison also, he can kind of skate by the suspension, has potential. And then Andrews can't complain with the kicker, and then the 49ers defense never complain with that. On the other side, I think that this is a great, I think they took the same strategy with getting Williams and Corum, because that's 100%. You want whatever running back is in that team or on that team on your team, because they're going to get fed. His wide receivers look really nasty. He's going to, if he has flex spots, I would just plug all of those guys in. It's a real good core. And then Taysom Hill is a really sneaky play because supposedly, I think it's Clay Kubiak or it's Clint, one of the Kubiaks, whoever's running New Orleans, says that they have big plans for Taysom Hill. So there's a little caveat there. Taysom Hill, somebody who's literally still available in whatever 13th, 14th round, it's going to be, it looks like it might be a nice pick.
Yeah, Christopher actually walked away saying he was champ. So he agrees with your assessment. He likes his team as well. I gave him an A minus. I like it. A lot of potential with Daniels if he breaks off with the rest of this roster. Kind of what I said to Craig earlier, about Craig's team earlier. They're going to be hard to beat. I'm not in love with Freiermuth, but as you mentioned, he snuck in Taysom Hill when I was going to snag him. Oh, I put him as receiver too. What the hell? I guess he can just do it all. So I like that. And I think he might end up, again, depending on what this offense starts to end up looking like, but Taysom Hill could be ending up in this particular lineup. All right. So Justin, we're going to bid you adieu. As we finish grading these teams. The only thing we got to finish up with now is doing our fantasy breakdown. So, my friend, I'll bid you adieu. We'll see you next Friday. Thanks so much for checking in and trooping out. But you know what time it is. I can't believe I'm doing this by myself for the first one.
Breakdown!
Bring it on down!
Breakdown!
Bring it on down! Bring it on down!
The fantasy breakdown is underway. We got football, ladies and gentlemen. Crazy enough. As you know or don't know, we like to look at all the aspects of the game. Usually like to do a little weather look at aspect too, but we're like a week out, so who the hell knows? But from what I saw and what I read, again, a little far out, but it looks like to be on both games, mid to low 70s, partly cloudy, very low precipitation. So precipitation, sorry. So weather shouldn't be a factor in either of the ball games, which is what we like to hear, at least in the beginning anyway. Let's start out. Ravens, Chiefs. Chiefs lead the overall series 8-5. They've actually won 5 out of the last 6 as well, including last season's AFC Championship, winning 17-10. So fantasy aspect wise, now again, we go on this from last season. So this is what it looked at the end of last year. Against fantasy QBs, the Ravens were number 2. Chiefs were number 11. Against running backs, the Ravens were number 6. Chiefs were number 12. Receiver, Ravens were number 8. The Chiefs were number 5. And tight ends, Ravens were 18th, and the Chiefs, excuse me for Julian, the Chiefs are number 3. So looking at this matchup overall, when we're just talking about winners and losers, I feel like last year the Chiefs definitely got punched in the mouth. I didn't see, I knew the Lions team was good. I definitely did not see them making this coming into oh my, I just saw your comment, Christopher. Future champ of the season. Absolutely. Doug Guitar, get to you in 1 second, my friend. Let me finish this Ravens and we'll talk about your lineup. So last year, like I said, felt like they got a little surprised. I know I was. That's something when you get those little punches in the mouth, you definitely don't want to feel that again. So as the matchup is concerned, I think the Chiefs will actually pull this out and revenge what happened from last season. But fantasy wise, I mean, I don't need to sit here and waste your time. You're obviously going to start every Chief you can. You're going to start most of the Ravens you can. I'm not in love with the receivers, but look, we're in week 1. I don't know what you have that could maybe go in your flex spot above Zay Flowers, but he's definitely a decent play. Basically, you're going to start these guys. I'm going to sit here. There doesn't need to be a long analysis of this game, especially the first game. It's going to be exciting. There's going to be new schemes, new things they throw at each other. So I'm all in on this ball game. Quite frankly, I would just start everyone. I don't need to sit here and waste your time and tell you all the little ins and outs because it's just how we're going to run it. Dole Guitar. All right. He's got a 9. Sorry. He's got start a QB, RB. So you got JT, Montgomery, receiver 1, 2, Puka, Ahmad. I have to start 3 at the flex. Rice, Olave, Higgins, and Dell. Okay. So you're wanting to start. Sorry, I just a little slow. Start 3 in the flex. You got Rice, Olave, Higgins, Dell. Ooh, that's nasty. I love that. Especially in Dynasty. I love the roster. I love the receivers. I don't know who the hell. I would really need to look at the matchups for this coming up week. But man, how could I not start Tank Dell? Believe they start with the Colts too, if I remember correctly. I think out of that group, man, maybe Chris Olave. No, I can't even do that. Maybe I can't even tell you, bro. I know. See, even Chris thinking the same thing, bro. So am I don't know how you could bench him neither. God, I can see why you got issues here, bro. These are good problems to have. I'm gonna say Higgins out of the group only because depending on now again monitoring the Jamar Chase situation. If he doesn't show up, obviously, Higgins is in all day. But Chris said, all you have to say is Derek Carr. You're correct. That was my thought as well on Olave, but he still shows out, bro. There's no doubt about it. Long story short, if Jamar Chase isn't there, then obviously Higgins is a role for me, and then I would sit Olave. There's too much excitement with Tank Dell. He could just explode. You just gotta have him in your lineup. So I like that a lot to have Dell in there. So I would say if Jamar Chase is a go week 1, you sit Higgins. If he's no go, then you sit Olave in that particular matchup. All right, so he's got a rookie draft Monday. All right. Look at this guy. So he's got Komet and Kittle. Was thinking of trading Dell for Jake. Hell no. Absolutely not. Do not get rid of Tank Dell. Good young receiver. I think you're good right now. There's a lot of young good tight end talent coming around right now, and you got a really healthy squad. Jake Ferguson wouldn't be somebody if you're going to trade Tank Dell, I'd be looking at Laporta or Kincaid or somebody that is going to be a long-term. Jake Ferguson, he's had one. Well, I'm saying with Kincaid, so what am I talking about? But I just feel like those other two, you have other tight ends that could finish top 10 top 5 overall versus doing with Jake Ferguson. So that would just be my thoughts on that. Thank you, Dell, for that. I got to sit here and read and formulate a thought and everything. All right, the other game. Oh, but I forgot to show everyone's picks. Before I forget, here's our matchups for week 1. Fantasy Jesus, the Judge, and me and Fred all like the Chiefs in this matchup. The Duke and the Juice all like the Ravens. So there's our first pick. Can still draft. There we go. Let me pull it up. Yeah, the Dunze. Oh, God, I know. God, boy, I mean, you got good problems, my friend. Like I said, even though with the Dunze, I mean, maybe if there's a trade with a Dunze, if that's something he'd be interested in, I might be thinking something like that, since there's a lot of targets to go around with the Bears right now. Even though he's the young prospect, you might be able to get someone like, again, going up a little bit of a higher tier, but talking to, again, not knowing what this guy else has on his roster. You might be able to go a little higher than Jake Ferguson with somebody like a Tank Dell or maybe even a Dunze, depending on how hot the owner is on those guys. All right, let's talk about the Eagles and the Packers real quick. In Brazil, Packers lead the series overall 28-18. Eagles won their last meeting 40-33. I hope it's something like that for this one. That'll be very exciting. Okay, going back on last season's stats, Packers 15th against QBs. They're 23rd against running backs, 17th against receivers, and 28th against tight ends. The Eagles dead last against QBs, number 9 against the run. They were decent against the run, dead last against receivers, and 25th against tight ends. You expect the Eagles defense to play a little better this season. However, I don't know how far you can go from dead last. So there's, again, Josh Jacobs is an obvious good start, even though they're good against the run. You're going to start him because he's going to see a lot of carries right now, because even if Marshawn Lloyd goes, he's still coming off an injury. So they're going to slow go at him. You're going to see a lot of Josh Jacobs in this matchup. So I definitely would start him no matter how good the Eagles defense was last year against the run. Again, going back to QB, you're going to start Jalen Hurts, and everyone, excuse my French, is dick riding Jordan Love and these Packers. So you're going to start them, especially how bad the Eagles D. You definitely want to test the water, so to speak. Packers receivers, pick and choose. You got Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs. There's a lot of decent plays here, but unfortunately, it's almost like a pick and choose moment, kind of like in the same respect with the Chiefs when Hollywood Brown gets back, because there's a few guys that can make plays like Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, all those guys. So anyway, a big mix of receivers. I feel like it's kind of a crapshoot. I'm definitely starting Christian Watson and Dobbs. I just kind of, the rest, I just get a little flexy, like they're a little flexy for me in that range. So Eagles, AJ Brown, obviously Saquon, you're going to start there. You're going to start all your Eagle stars. I'm not bringing out Jahan Dotson week 1, especially in a new offense. So there really isn't any little sneaky play to tell you like, hey, start this guy, whatnot, because basically you got your big meat and potatoes when you come to that lineup. You got Hurts, Goddard, Barkley, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith. That's it. There you go. You're good. I don't know if I'm starting either of these defenses, to be honest with you. And I know we were talking about the Eagles defense was not very good last year against the pass. Packers were okay, but they weren't that great neither. I expect some offensive fireworks in this matchup, so I'd shy away from both defenses in it as well. And Chris has got his take. He thinks the Chiefs win 31-24 and the Eagles win 24-21. Ironically, I totally agree with you, Chris. Again, I think we're on point with agreeing each other tonight. I like the Eagles in this matchup as well. The judge actually agrees with me. The rest of the crew, like I said, they are dick riding these Packers this year. I really don't get it. I know they got a little hot last year. I'm just not in love with their squad. And I really like the potential of what the Eagles can do. Let's not forget this team that was just in the Super Bowl not too recently. So I like what this team can get back to, especially with the addition of Saquon. Really adds a little bit of oomph into this, this offense. All right, guys. Well, listen, I appreciate all your comments. Thanks for sticking with us a little bit longer than we normally go, but I do appreciate it. Don't forget to check us out next Friday. We're going to have our first Friday night full breakdown. We're going to go over all the Sunday matchups, give you all the fantasy tidbits, way better than what I just did just now on my solo self. And also, don't forget to wake up with us every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. We're going to give you the full breakdown. I got a lot of fun segments with that as well. Brian always comes in, does his inside the medical tent, so I'll give you the latest in injuries as well. So stick and stay with us. We appreciate you guys, and we appreciate all the comments tonight. And we are out.